Hey team, welcome back to another epic episode of the Intentional Agribusiness Leader Podcast. This is your host, Mark Jewell, and today I am joined by the lovely Lana Green, who's a national account manager with Vive Crop Protection. She's out of a fellow North Carolinian via the Midwest, as am I. I'm from Minnesota. She's from South Dakota originally, but we're both here in North Carolina. So Lana, thanks for being on the show. I'm excited to get into this today.
Mark, a pleasure. Thank you so much for the opportunity to get to visit with you here this afternoon. I'm really excited about the conversation.
You bet. This is going to be fun. First question that everybody gets, though. What does it mean for you to be intentional?
You know, that's a great question. And I would encourage the audience to really keen into this question. It's a common question that Mark affords the audience to hear from folks that he asks this around, what does it mean for me, Lana, to be intentional? And when I really stop and think about this, Mark, you know, being intentional for me means making deliberate choices that I'm really trying to reflect on what's most important to me and to us at the organization that I work in. You know, when I dig into that, maybe just another layer, Mark, really around being intentional can really help me with my mindset. I find that if I align to intention, my mindset, generally speaking, is maintaining in a positive way. It also helps me to infuse more clarity on what I'm wanting to accomplish, not only professionally, but personally. And more so with having that level of intention, I stay very true and very present to what I have at hand.
Mm-hmm. Very cool. All right, let's unpack that a little bit for everybody, because you guys need to go back and just rewind a minute and re-listen to Lana as she lays that out for you. Deliberate choices. Let's just get into that piece first, right? What does that look like for you on a day-to-day?
Yeah, deliberate choices for me, Mark, if I peel that onion back, it first and foremost starts with Lana personally. So living intentionally for me is taking care of myself. And many people are going to be listening to this going, wow, what direction is this going? But in order for me to operate intentionally, I've got to take care of myself, which means my time management personally has to be at the most high priority. Therefore, when I get into the professional side of life, I've managed my intention of Lana first and foremost personally, so that I can dovetail and bring my best self into my professional business.
Beautiful. Thank you for saying that. This is such you guys that are listening to this right now, I just want to distill that down, in my voice. What Lana's talking about is being deliberate and making her physical, mental, emotional capacity the center, right, of that intentionality. And all things have to support that, or they don't.
Yes. And that comes in a couple of different facets. And, there's not a rule book for this, Mark, per se. I think each individual makes their own rule book around how they become deliberate in their choices. But first and foremost for me is keeping a regular schedule Monday through Sunday. So my Monday through Sunday is identical. Whether I'm on the road, whether I have the fortunate opportunity of having a day at my home office, or I'm out celebrating with friends personally on the weekend. So I try to keep that choice of my personal life staying consistent Monday through Sunday.
I love it. So good. You know, one of the things that we talk about this in our Thriving Leader program all the time, but we teach it in our Law of Infusion framework. And the definition of that is that I can only infuse others to the degree that I first infuse myself. And the harsh reality is that many of us are operating from a state of pouring from an empty cup. I find this to be very, very common across the broad scope of the industry. And we are out here best intentions, right? With it's good intentions, but it's not intentional. Because at the end of the day, we're missing details, we're phoning it in early, we're not maybe taking it as to the level of detail that we could, or maybe we go too deep in detail because we're so locked in. And this is one of the things that we're actively trying to change is to be intentional, right, means first you must know what's best for yourself so that the other people in your life aren't just getting the leftovers.
That's great, Mark. You hit on something that I wanted to share with you, and maybe some others may be able to grab hold of this. Our industry talks a lot about being best in class. Generally speaking, we talk about our products and our people being best in class. I want to pause here for a minute, Mark. I want to be best in class, and I think you do as well. And so in order for an individual to be best in class, I think this piece around being intentional is got to be part of the story. It also helps us to increase our focus of commitment and bringing more purpose and meaning into our lives. So organizations want best in class products and people. And I believe that part of the best in class of the people is that the individuals need to make sure their intentionality is at a high level in order for them to be best in class within that organization.
100%. Could not say it better. Perfect. I want to dive more into some of these things on the back half of the show today. It's so much that we could pry into with that, but let's learn a little bit more about you first. Let's learn about Vive. Share us a little, share a little bit with us about Lana and Vive Crop Protection.
Well, wonderful. I had the opportunity to join Vive Crop here about 3 months ago, Mark. So, a big change within my career, but I had an opportunity and a vision that I felt that I could bring the level of experience and talent that I've had throughout my career into the Vive organization. Here at Vive, I'm a national account manager, as you indicated on the introduction. And boiling that back and really simply put, I manage our distribution network. And so here at Vive, we have really strong partnerships within the distribution channel. And so my goal is to really align with them on the portfolio of post-patent materials that we're bringing to market to help bring value and extract that value and additional margin, not only for the organizations that we work with, but also at the farm gate. And so we are a startup by nature. We are a young organization, but we are thriving and have some really great goals as we build out more in our sales team, but also just really excited to be part of this solution that we're bringing into the market.
Beautiful. Love it. I love it. Well, you've gotten to experience a number of organizations over the broad scope of your career. Talk to us a little bit about the culture in some of the places and what you found has worked for you. What attracts good talent? What repels people, or maybe some of the wrong people from being in these places? And you've gotten to see this in some legacy organizations, and now you're seeing it on the startup side. So you've got kind of a unique perspective. Just elaborate on that in whatever way feels good for you.
Wow, I will. Specifically with our industry, we are people doing business with people. We all went through something quite interesting a few years ago that did not afford us the opportunity to have physical interactions like our industry was probably most used to. And so we learned, Mark, as we're doing today, that you can have effective conversations through different technology platforms, but one of the pieces that became really interesting to me is thinking through probably around talent retention or what are some of the things that organizations are doing to bring in great talent and what's been attractive for me throughout my organization, throughout my experience of the different organizations I've been in. Yeah. And, a couple of items that I really feel are of key value for me, for Lana in the different organizations I've worked for, is really around professional development. So, having an organization that believes in professional development, so the alignment of mentor and mentee relationships to really help me to identify and achieve not only my goals within the role that I was in, but goals that I would have within the career within that organization and or the length of my career to date. A couple of other things, certainly being in more sales focused roles, there is very much just the growth. Like, what does the role provide as far as growth as an individual contributor, but also an influencer to the greater good of the organization.
Yeah.
So making sure that that's really something that is important. I think another area that organizations that I've been part of that have done a really good job in retaining talent in the companies is really around having, role modeling and new perspectives of bringing in, we have a uniqueness and a quaintness, Mark, within the agribusiness sector or the agriculture sector, is that even living and growing up in the Midwest, I moved to the South just like you have. And, our people find each other, right? And so being able to have that support and that skill development has been really important for my career individually, but also I've seen that through the organizations that I've worked at, is just really making sure that they're focused on their people, like-minded people, not exactly the same. So I think that's something that's really important, is it's good to have this melting pot of different talents and attributes that employees can bring to teams to really help them grow.
Yeah, wonderful. First of all, you said by two of my favorite words, which is professional development. As the leader of a professional development organization, we certainly love to hear that. That can mean a lot of different things to a lot of people, but you specifically talked about, mentoring or having mentors. Elaborate on that a little bit. Would love to, just hear your thoughts. First of all, what has worked for you in being mentored?
Oh, great question. Thank you for the platform to talk about this. I think it is an art that's not lost. I think it's an art that hasn't been fully uncovered. For me specifically, I had influencers early on in my career that encouraged me the value of having true mentorships. I have always made sure throughout my journey within my career that I had two professional mentors, one level up wherever I sat within the organization, and then having a peer mentor along with having a personal development coach and or mentor. Why I feel there's value in the trifecta, Mark, of that equation is it's helped me to stay honest. It's helped me to have that fact checked or that gut check of making sure that I'm not looking at something just generally emotionally, or am I, doing a cause and effect because maybe I'm racing for something that's just not an option today. And so through this, what I have learned is it's a non-negotiable for Lana. So having a true mentor-mentee relationship is a non-negotiable for me in my career professionally, but also personally. I think that goes back to intentional living, of really make sure that I stay aligned to those deliberate choices that I make, and having a sounding board. It is okay to be wrong. And it is okay to be right. In both of those examples, it's okay to talk through those experiences to understand what modifications may need to be made, what celebrations maybe need to take place, and what instances occurred that you hope never take place again. And so that's the value that I see in having true mentorship relationships with folks, both in industry and outside of industry, is to really help me to grow and show up as the best form of Lana.
Beautiful. First of all, incredibly intentionally stated. So thank you. You put that into a very nice framework that people can implement immediely. Mentorship, it costs you nothing in most cases, right?
It's free. It's a choice.
I remember, back early in my sales career, I worked for a training organization selling large deployments into the Winfields and so forth of the world, and Behringer Ingelheims and things like that. And even though we sold sales training, we didn't have sales training that I could, other than just going through what we were selling, which was great. And I learned a lot from that. But I was at a professional event, and there was a retirement speech being given by an individual who was introduced as the greatest salesperson that the MC had ever met. And that person lived in a place that I frequented. And so I approached him and I said, "Hey, when I'm in town, can I buy you lunch?" And for the price of a lunch and 2 glasses of Chardonnay, I got all the sales coaching from one of the most legendary salespeople the industry has known. And it's like,
Mark, but you had the courage to ask for that.
Well, you have to. And this is part of the intentionality of structuring this for yourself. So, but there are a couple of things that you added in there that I think are really unique, and I think people should take advantage of and implement in their own life. So the first one is you're getting a mentor who's a level up from where you are right now. Right. So another way to phrase that is you're talking to somebody who's where you want to be.
Correct.
Right. And spending some time with them, whether it's a lunch or just booking an hour a month to sit down, or whatever cadence works for you in your schedule, their schedule, a few times a year even can be super helpful. It doesn't, you can develop that for yourself, but then having somebody on a peer level, right, who's on a similar level, who can kind of maybe call you out, if you're, torquing some people off or whatever the case may be, or also encourage you and help you celebrate. I like that. And then also the personal. I want you to talk a little bit more about this. So getting somebody from outside the space, and this takes time and intention to actually reach out and go find someone to help out. So what has that looked like for you? Are you talking fitness coaching, life coaching, all of the above? Like, what does that look like for you?
Great question. So for me, on the personal side of it, it would really be around, a personal coach that has a faith component baked into that. That's a big key for me on my intentionality. And so, the life coach is, why do you wake up and do what you do each day, Lana? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Why do you choose to, walk your dog X many miles a day? What's the intention around that? How are you showing up as an empathetic and compassionate individual? Is it for real, or did you put on a mask for that moment? Mm-hmm. And really vetting those situations out and making sure that I have challenged myself, Mark, over the last year and I would encourage the listeners to pause here and to really think about this question that I ask myself. Lana, do you show up into each room as the same Lana from the previous room? And I will be honest, there have been challenges in me answering that question based off of, whatever the scenario would be. But in part of living an intentional life, again, both professionally and personally, is that making sure I show up the same way in each room that I enter.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. I love it. Well, it's so much good in that. And what I drew out on my notes here is just a little triangle, right? With what I put the person or the client, or myself in the middle, like who's at that level that's where I want to be. My wife and I have 2 coaches that are 10 years ahead of us in both levels of accomplishment. Like they've accomplished far more than we ever have. We associate with them. We get together with them once a year in person. We meet with them twice a month virtually. We go to events and so forth with them. And it's like, hey, because they're where we want to be, not only professionally, but as a couple, right?
No doubt.
From a health perspective, like they are the epitome of everything that we want to be. They're the way they run their family. That's how we want to run our family. So we associate with them. And then we have plenty of people that are on a peer level as well. And these things kind of tie together all the way around. So anyway, I encourage that because, and here's the watch out for people in mentorship is often mentorship is not intentionally done. What we'll do often is we'll take a very green salesperson and we'll put them with a 30-year veteran and we'll say, hey, go follow Bill for the day and see what he does. Well, that is a very poor way to train a salesperson because what Bill can pull off after 30 years of being out there talking to farmers at the farm gate is likely unachievable for somebody who's brand new. He knows some things. They've been through some things. He has a lot of context to what goes on in the situation, and it's so that it can do more harm than good if it's not done well. Now, if we've worked with Bill and had a conversation with like, hey, I want you to take this person from where they're at to just one notch up the rung, right? And I want you to help them get there. Now, Bill has context on how to mentor and what to mentor for.
Yeah, Mark, I think another piece that I would just bolt on to my strategy around, how I go around the articulation of my mentorship for myself and what I seek is I don't want to be a robot, right? And so by having the 3-prong approach or the 3 different rungs within the mentorship, that allows for me to stay true to who I am. And I can bolt on to the different mentors that I have within my preview or my charge, if you will, but it allows for me to stay true to who I am. And that allows for me to bring in the influence from others, right? Gain the energy, the direction, the feedback, whether it's constructive or criticism, right? Those are all okay, but it allows for me to stay true to who I am.
Beautiful. Love it. Okay. You have a lot going on. National account manager. You're out there walking your dog miles and miles a day. I assume along with the role, there comes a fair amount of travel to get out there and be in front of people face to face. And you're part of a startup organization, and that calls for lots of meetings and organizing of time. We talked a little bit about time off the call. And I would love for you to kind of give a little bit of a synopsis for like, what is intentional time management or being intentional with your time look like in the life of Lana Green?
Thank you for that. Yeah, we audience, Mark and I had an opportunity as we were preparing for this. I wanted to share with you all this nuance of time that I have recently faced myself with, and would actually articulate it's been quite challenging. And that is when I check in with myself, if I check in with my peers, the management team of, how is everything going? As I indicated, I've been with the organization a couple of months, 3 to be exact. What's the biggest challenge I'm being faced with? And my answer keeps continuing to be time. And what I mean by that, Mark, is the amount of information. And I think this goes for even someone who's been in their same role, thriving and growing for 20 years. We as a culture have so much data that we can ingest, right? We have phones that are personal computers that are always with us. We have platforms we scroll. We have emails that come to us at all times of the day. And so what I found was I have been this level of infused data of information that has been flowing my way has translated into this nuance of not feeling as though I have enough time to ruminate, to get through all of the information that is coming into me. And so I have been reflecting lately and really making sure that I'm staying focused on back to that time management piece and that intentionality piece of what do I need to work on that is urgent, business critical today? What is something that if I put this in the file cabinet for a due time, I'll get to? And what are some things that either can be deliberately moved off the proverbial table and dropped on the floor and or given to someone else to manage? And so that probably seems very like, well, gosh, you should be able to do that. Everyone should be able to do that. And I would encourage us to really think about, are we doing that well with intention? Are we just doing it, or are we just avoiding it in total? One of the pieces that I think a lot about around time is I want to be so undeniably intentional with my time, which means the robot option is unacceptable with time. I don't want Monday through Friday to be the exact same thing over and over as I go through time. I want to make sure that each of my choices, each of my meetings are very deliberate as I go through this new journey that I'm being challenged with around time.
Beautiful. It's such an important topic for people to really allocate time to sit down. When I say allocate time, I mean blocking some time in your calendar to sit down and think about how you'd like to experience your day, your week, your month, your year. Right? As we record this, it's end of 2024. As it gets listened to, will be the beginning of 2025. Good time of the year to sit back and think about, what story do I want to tell about this year, a year from now? If I'm sitting down with a performance review with myself, glass of wine, having a beer, thinking about, okay, how'd the year go? You know, and just in the corner of my mind, like, what story do I want to be telling about myself and my experience? And that's an important piece. And one thing I would encourage people to think about, and I'll just bolt it on to the answer that you gave, which was so perfect, but it's really challenging yourself to think about, not how do I want to use my time? Because at the end of the day, time is, if I don't show up in the world tomorrow, time's going to move forward and do just fine without me. So I'm not going to manage it at all. Okay. What I can take a stand for, though, is, what do I want my experience in this life, in this time, in this segment of eternity to be? What is my life experience? What's the standard for what my life experience gets to be, right? And that becomes almost an ethos, right?
Yes.
So Christine and I have just a rule, more of a guideline, I suppose, really, but we're constantly measuring against it, and it's to not feel rushed. Okay. Do we sometimes get rushed? Do we get a little too much on the plate? A few too many things in the calendar? Do I put sometimes I put 3 podcasts back to back because I just want to fit it all in? Do I do that to myself? Of course I do. I'm human. I'm not perfect with this. But then I take time and I sit back and reflect, and I get together with my team and I say, hey, don't let me do that again. Because it's degrading the content by the time we get to the end of the 3rd podcast. And I can't remember which person I asked which question to. Right? And we all do this in our own way throughout the course of the day. So everything in our life gets built backwards from, what does the experience get to be? It has to be this or something better. And if it's detracting from that or something better, then it has to go or get rearranged or be done differently.
Mark, thank you for that wisdom. I want to add on to this of what you're sharing as we're likely getting close to wrapping up our time in this segment is, here's my question, rhetorically, for the audience and for you. Would you rather be rushed or busy? And my option is neither. I'd rather be intentional with my time.
Beautiful. Put that quote right there on the website. Lock it in. Very good. All right, Lana, we're gonna do this again in 2025 at some point. Awesome. And get on here, and we're gonna talk sales and sales. What that looks like from your space, and because I know you have a lot of insights and a lot of great things to share. I knew in a 30-minute show today, we were only going to skim the surface and get people to get to know you. But you're obviously a rock star in your space, and more people need to hear more about you. So we'll get into that. What final thoughts would you have to share with the group today on intentionality, and then let us know how we go learn more about Vive?
Well, gosh, I think we covered off a lot here today. I would just encourage the audience to just take a minute, breathe in what Mark's doing here with his podcast, and listen to all the different folks that you've had the pleasure to interview and go through this. I just wish everyone a really good start to the new year that we're getting ready to launch into. And, I would leave you all with one thought, and it comes from a book that I actually had the opportunity to read recently. And it's called Never Split the Difference. And it's a really great book. It's really the storyline from a gentleman that joined the FBI down in Kansas City. His name's Chris Voss. But I don't want to do too much of a spoiler alert, but the book really does help us to understand and show you how to really establish rapport when you're thinking around different sales strategies and working through that. there's a whole component around empathy. And empathy is such an interesting word. I hope next year, Mark, we can talk more around empathy and trust as we think about different sales tactics as we work through things. It also really gains a perspective around the permission to be persuasive, right? So a lot of times people go, well, I'm in sales. Of course, I should be able to persuade, but it really gives you the permission in order to go about doing so. It also helps you to really build out and articulate questions that you should be asking as you're working on negotiations and going through some things. But more importantly, the last two areas that the book spends time with is around conflict, around collaboration, and also identifying and spotting liars. So as you're working, you're really building out your sales strategies and your tools, is how do you really work through conflict resolution as you're dealing with that? So anyway, this has just been a pleasure this afternoon. I've really enjoyed our conversation around intentionality and what you're doing here with this podcast, and very much look forward to next year and sharing more about my experience with the organization that I'm in today here at Vive, and just look forward to more.
Perfect. Lana, thanks for being on the show. This has been great.
You're welcome, Mark.